Well, it's wonderful to be here with all of you tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Nora Benavides, an officer of the Georgia First Amendment Foundation's Board of Directors. On behalf of the foundation, I'd like to welcome you all to the 23rd Charles L. Weltner Freedom of Information Award Banquet. Thank you. And just please continue your dinners while I do these shout outs. This is supposed to be fun and celebratory, so thank you. I'd love to just give a few shout outs here, so bear with us. We'll make it fun, I swear. I want to thank first Emory University for hosting this wonderful year, and for every year. You are a tremendous partner of ours. I'd like to thank our sponsors for their support of this event, the work it honors, and the cause it serves. They are identified on the screen at the front and in your programs. And so we would not be able to do our work without our sponsors, and we are pleased to see so many of you in the crowd this evening. In particular, I'd like to call out support from our platinum sponsors, CNN, my wonderful table, Kilpatrick Townsend, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Thank you to our gold sponsor, the Griffiths Family Fund. Woo! I really do love the applause. It's making it fun. We're grateful to Kaplan Cobb, LexisNexis, and the UGA Department of Journalism for your many years as silver sponsors. Rough Draft's ongoing support is so valuable to us, and we are pleased to welcome a new sponsor who's also a familiar face, Carolyn Carlson, one of the foundation's. There she is in the back. Give a wave, Carolyn. Carolyn is one of the foundation's early board members who has served and supported our organization for many years. We are grateful for the generosity of all of our sponsors, so thank you all, and one more round of applause. I'd like to also introduce some of our distinguished guests this evening. If you would hold up a hand when I call your name so that people can find you, I'd love that, so thank you. Let's start with a few former foundation honorees. Former Weltner Award honoree, State Representative Mary Margaret Oliver. We are so grateful for Mary Margaret Oliver's continued open government advocacy in the Georgia legislature. Thank you so much. I'd love to welcome past open government honor heroes, Jane Hansen, Nydia Tisdale, and Nan Brown, who are all here. We welcome fellow past honoree, Pulitzer Prize winner, and editorial cartoonist with the AJC, Mike Lukovich. And finally, Richard Belcher will join this wonderful group of honorees tonight when we present him with our Open Government Award. Past Founders Award recipients, Hyde Post and Peter Canfield are here. You know, both Hyde and Peter helped establish the foundation back in 1994, and I can't help but feel some nostalgia and gratitude for both of you for the role that you continue to play in our present and in our future, so thank you so much. We look forward to also recognizing our own Richard Griffiths this year and this evening as the newest recipient of our Founders Award. And then we're very grateful to have the entire family of journalist Mario Guevara here. If you'd all give a wave. And Mario's children will accept our Frontline Award on Mario's behalf. You'll hear more about that in the next set of remarks later on. From the Georgia Supreme Court, please welcome Chief Justice Nels Peterson. Give it a wave. Justices Verda Colvin and Andrew Pinson are here, and Justice Sean Ellen LaGrua joined us for cocktails before heading to another event. We're also pleased to have the court's public information officer, Kathleen Joyner, with us as well. Thank you, Kathleen. We are thrilled to have the late Chief Justice Charles Weltner's daughter, Susan Yao. Susan, where are you? There she is. Hi, Susan. And Susan will present our Weltner Freedom of Information Award later tonight. As well, we have Judge Christopher McFadden of the Georgia Court of Appeals here. Where is he? Over there at 5. As well as Fulton Superior Court judges Alice Benton, Scott McAfee, and Paige Whitaker. Hello. Former 11th Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Beverly Martin is here as well. I love when people in the crowd recognize the people being named and give a little point. It's very cute to watch. So. Now, there was one name I was nervous about, but here we go, y'all, and we're gonna get it wrong. I have a hard name too, so we're gonna lean into all of it being hard. We're also glad to see Noelle Lajo Alvarez and Joanna Deering. Yes, thank you so much. Solidarity together, you know, yeah. From the Judicial Council of Georgia and the Administrative Office of the Courts. Of course, we have Dean Charles Davis, head of UGA's Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication. He is our man of the evening, and he will be here to accept our Weltner Award later on. Seated at his table is John Peters, Associate Dean of UGA's Grady College and a board member of mine and past president. So thank you so much for being here. Continuing with the UGA theme, we're trying to stay on theme. We're pleased to welcome Claire Norins over, I think on table 10. Hi, Claire, director of the UGA Law School's First Amendment Clinic. She's also a board member of the foundation and worked closely on Mario Guevara's case. Moni Basu, head of Grady College's Narrative Nonfiction program, is with us as well. Plus, check out the table filled with UGA students, including our own intern with the foundation, Shweta Krishnan. From Emory University, we welcome Hank Klibanoff, director of Emory's phenomenal from the phenomenal Georgia Civil Rights Cold Cases Project. Hank is joined by a squad of student journalists from Emory, so thank you all for being here. We're glad Kennesaw State University's Stella Payne is with us tonight, as are a few of her KSU students. They might be seated next to you, so say hello. Thank you so much. Yay. And no gathering of First Amendment-minded people would be complete without journalists, and we are delighted to have so many in the room. CNN is well represented, and we're grateful to Drew Shankman and Frank Lamonte for convening their colleagues. Frank is a member of our foundation board and also chairs the annual Georgia Bar Media and Judiciary Conference, where judges, attorneys, and journalists come together to examine timely First Amendment issues. Thank you all for being here. Atlanta Journal-Constitution Editor-in-Chief Leroy Chapman is here, as at a table filled with AJC folks. You'll see AJC columnist Bill Torpy in the crowd, as well as opinion editor David Plazas. The AJC's Mike Jordan is here. He's also chair. Yay! He's chair of the Atlanta Press Club's Board of Directors, and I'm also pleased that we have Press Club Executive Director Julia Boyd in the room as well. Rough Draft Atlanta publisher Keith Pepper is here. as is DuBose Porter, publisher of newspapers and magazines all over. DuBose also is a Georgia First Amendment Foundation board member. Joining DuBose is Joshua Williams, executive director of the Macon Melody. We welcome Eric Neesmith, publisher of The Bitter Southerner, as well as Dean Annison. Dean is editor-in-chief of the Atlanta Business Chronicle, and we have Matt Scott, executive director of the Atlanta Community Press Collective. We're grateful, as we slowly round this out, for so many of the First Amendment advocates in the room. It's great to see Flavia Fuentes of the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press and Andrew Lewis of First Five Freedoms. A special thank you to our board member, Dale Russell, and the talented high school student and filmmaker, Stella St. Clair, for both of their hard work on our honoree video, which you'll see in a few minutes. Finally, I would like to introduce my fellow foundation officers, who I have had the real distinct pleasure of working with closely this year. Sarah Brewerton Palmer, our president. John Mac Freeman and Joy Ramsing. And for just a little bit of fanfare, I'd love to have all of the foundation members stand up. So if you're a GFAF board member in the room, would you stand? Well, I promised fun. I hope I delivered. I hope you've been eating. We're here to have a wonderful night. We're delighted that all of you could come join us tonight in the celebration. Enjoy your dinner, and we will resume the program in a few moments. Thank you so much.
I'd like to move on to the next phase of the dinner. We don't want to keep you too long, so I'd like to interrupt all your fun conversations. This way? How's that? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I can tell the difference. Okay. Well, good evening. My name is Sarah Brewerton Palmer. I'm the current president of the Georgia First Amendment Foundation. It's a real privilege to be here tonight among so many people who believe in the power of the First Amendment as a safeguard for our democracy. We're gathered at a time where the principles behind that amendment, the freedoms of speech, press, assembly, petition, and religion feel more contested, yet more essential than ever. In our current political climate, polarization and extremism have driven Americans further apart than at any point in recent memory. Too many of us see politics as a battle to be won, not a conversation to be had. And this polarization, it doesn't just divide people, it erodes trust. It leads people to think that their government is acting in bad faith. It leaves the truth itself up for debate. And the resulting cynicism undermines our democracy, makes it brittle. And when people stop believing in their institutions, they stop participating in them. The antidote to that is transparency and the free exchange of ideas. The founders of our country understood that democracy can't survive behind closed doors. That's why they wrote the First Amendment, to guarantee that the people, not the government, would have the final word, that we would always be able to question our leaders, to publish uncomfortable truths, and to demand answers. It's that same instinct that led Congress and our General Assembly here in Georgia to enshrine the value of government transparency in our laws. Here in Georgia, we see the power of those principles every day. In recent years, open records have powered a number of consequential investigations by reporters, including many in this room here tonight. Video feeds in our courtrooms from the Georgia Supreme Court down to the superior courts have enhanced trust in the judicial process and have allowed members of the public to watch high-profile cases as they play out in real time. Open meetings laws have made sure that members of the public can be present when big decisions are made. Each year across the state, thousands of meetings of school boards, city councils, county commissions, and state agencies take place under public scrutiny. For each of these agencies and bodies, public access enhances their legitimacy and makes them accountable to their constituents. But those are all examples where our laws have worked as they were designed. But the truth is that the promises of the First Amendment and of our state's sunshine laws can be broken. We've seen that here in Georgia too. At the foundation, we work with people across the state who are having trouble getting public records, who can't access public meetings, who are facing blowback from the government for the content of their speech. I'd like to highlight a few key ways that the foundation provides resources to those people who might otherwise be left to throw up their hands, call the system broken, stop speaking, and stop engaging with their government. The foundation maintains 3 manuals that explain in plain English the rules and laws for accessing information and meetings under our sunshine laws, accessing information in the court system, and accessing information from law enforcement. And when those books don't answer someone's question, we help connect people to resources that can help them vindicate their rights. In recent years, we've seen a lot of frustration from citizens who aren't getting assistance from the Attorney General's office, which has a program that is supposed to help members of the public resolve open records or open meetings violations by working with government agencies. But because the Attorney General's office has taken the position that it can enforce the Open Records Act and the Open Meetings Act against state agencies, because they represent them in court, that program doesn't work in practice. And we've tried to fill that gap ourselves with other resources, but there's just far less enforcement of the sunshine laws than there used to be. And the court's hesitance to award fees to successful open records plaintiffs makes it hard for private attorneys to help as well. We at the foundation are here to work with anybody who wants to try to find a solution to that problem. The foundation also provides trainings across the state to journalists, students, and members of law enforcement about open records laws and the First Amendment, including how to protest safely and within your First Amendment rights. We write amicus briefs to help courts understand issues impacting the First Amendment and our sunshine laws. And we routinely work with legislators to advise on how proposed bills will impact First Amendment rights and our transparency laws. Our work will only become more important in the coming years. Now, we at the foundation understand that it's easy enough to talk about those shared values in a speech. It is a lot harder to live those values in practice every day and make sure that our government keeps the promises that were made to us in the First Amendment and in our transparency laws. It's our firm belief that when those promises are kept, when records are open, when meetings are public, and when diverse speech is protected, faith in and engagement with democracy grows stronger. The foundation will remain committed to our work and will stand as a resource to Georgians across the state to help them exercise their rights. But we can't do this alone. We need all of you too. So I want to thank you for being here tonight and for supporting our mission. And I ask that each of you take with you after tonight a recommitment to our shared values of freedom of speech and the public's right to know what the government is doing on our behalf. If we are to keep those fundamental freedoms and our democracy with them, then we must watch over them vigilantly. We must exercise them diligently. And for those who help lead our government, you must carry them out conscientiously. Thank you. Now, as we transition to the rest of the evening, we're going to bestow some awards on several people who are exemplars of the foundation's values and mission. Our first award of the evening is newly created. It honors journalists who are doing important work on the front lines of the public's right to know. The inaugural honoree of the Frontline Award is a man that you have seen in the headlines in recent months. Immigration reporter Mario Guevara was arrested while covering the No Kings protest in June. He was detained for more than 100 days, first by local law enforcement and then by ICE. All charges against Mario were soon dropped, and an immigration judge ordered that he be released from custody in early July. But ICE refused to let Mario go, instead putting him in solitary confinement for long periods. Even though Mario moved to the US in 2004 and raised a family here, even though he had a work authorization to be here and was on the path to obtaining a green card, even though the charges against him had been dropped, the federal government deported Mario this month to his native El Salvador, a country he fled 2 decades ago. And here's why that happened. Mario had developed a large following online for his Spanish language immigration coverage. He would show up at ICE raids, covering them live on streaming platforms. Often he was the only Spanish-speaking reporter on the scene. He was live streaming a No Kings protest in June when he was arrested. Federal law enforcement have portrayed Mario's case as an immigration matter, but it wasn't. It was about interfering with news gathering and retaliating against a reporter who scrutinized immigration authorities. The federal government's own court documents revealed that Mario was targeted because of his reporting on ICE. Mario may be the first Georgia journalist in this era to be locked up for doing his job, but we at the First Amendment Foundation fear that he will not be the last. Tonight, with our Frontline Award, we recognize Mario's courageous efforts to keep reporting on important topics with our Frontline Award. And we hope that this award also bolsters the reporting community's courage to continue pursuing urgent coverage here in Georgia. To accept the award in his absence, Mario's son Oscar and his daughter Catherine are here with us tonight. You can please come to the stage to accept the award. My final task of the night, I have the distinct privilege of honoring one of the Foundation's own. Richard Griffiths, a leader, a journalist, a teacher, a friend, and an unflagging advocate for open government and free expression, is the recipient of our Founders Award tonight. This award recognizes Richard's extraordinary leadership and long-standing service to the cause of transparency and press freedom. For more than 15 years, Richard has been a driving force behind the Foundation's mission, first as a board member, then as our president, and always as one of our most trusted voices. Richard's leadership has strengthened the Foundation by helping establish our endowment and securing our financial future, expanding our partnerships across the state, and taking our message directly to Georgians, teaching them about open government laws and the power of free speech. As a career journalist, Richard has always understood that access to information gives people power. He has brought that conviction not only to newsrooms across Georgia, but to audiences around the world, teaching ethics, investigative reporting, and the value of a free press on 6 continents. Here at home, he continues to be one of our main spokespersons, helping the public understand why these freedoms matter and how fragile they can be. Richard, on behalf of the board and everyone who believes in the work that we do, thank you for your leadership, your integrity, and your tireless commitment to the public's right to know. It's my great honor to present you with our Founders Award.
I am truly honored, deeply honored. The Georgia First Amendment Foundation just feels more needed than ever. The recognition of Mario just moments ago really resonates with me because I am an immigrant. In college, with a fresh off the plane British accent, I started my journalism career in campus radio and as the opinion columnist for the UNC Greensboro newspaper, The Carolinian. It was the thick of Watergate, and I was inspired by Carl Bernstein. I took on the government for all kinds of issues, including failure to control inflation and rights for women and minorities, policing in black neighborhoods in Greensboro. No one batted an eye. Certainly no one threatened me with arrest or deportation. When I applied for citizenship in Dallas almost a decade after immigrating, my news director coached me on my citizenship exam. And when I went for the interview, the immigration judge fired a litany of questions that I was prepared for. Then, noting my profession, she peered over her glasses and asked a question that I was not prepared for. Please name the 9 Supreme Court justices. How many of you could do that? My stomach heaved. I could think of only 3. I knew about Rehnquist and all about Chief Justice Warren Burger and his strict constructionist approach to the law. Then I spoke about Sandra Day O'Connor from Arizona, the first woman on the court. And to my enormous relief, the immigration judge interrupted. That's good, you've passed. She wrote a few notes, and then the immigration judge looked at me right in the eye and she said, "Thank you for your journalism work. It's very important." My, how things have changed. Since my retirement from my beloved CNN, this organization has become my main outlet, allowing me to mentor, advocate for open government, encourage independent accountability journalism in small newsrooms all over this state and indeed in North Carolina and South Carolina, defend free speech, even argue for rule of law. What's more fun than that? What makes this organization so cool is that it is a very hands-on organization. The people who volunteer with this organization, who volunteer for the foundation, whether concerned citizens, thoughtful attorneys, helpful librarians, or curious journalists, they are all in working together. Everyone has their sleeves rolled up. To join with other volunteers in such an organization is such a privilege. Thank you for letting me work with you all, and thank you for honoring me tonight. The fun thing about being the old geezer at these events is that to humor you, they let you do stuff. And I am really happy I'm being allowed to do the next part. It's about a friend of mine down here that I've come to know and respect over the last decades. A Metro Atlanta native, Richard Belcher, had a 51-year career in television news in Atlanta, much of it at WSB Channel 2. His focus was investigative journalism, the kind that made public officials who weren't doing their jobs quake in their loafers. His approach was simple: have curiosity, start asking questions, develop a hunch. Then file an open records request to see if the hunch was true. And when the records showed that there was indeed a problem, he would work hard to get comment from those responsible, then craft a script that became a TV story that laid out all those telling details. He could make the most mundane malfeasance interesting. As a former reporter and open government advocate who was frequently asked to comment on the lack of transparency for Richard's stories, I was always impressed how he could ask just two carefully crafted on-camera questions, get the quote he needed, and stop. Unlike so many journalists, particularly the young ones, who require 10 questions to get to the heart of the matter, he knew how to avoid wasting everybody's time. For naughty public officials who had cut corners, not properly managed to get something done right, or failed to deliver on promises, he was relentless. And he set a standard for thoroughness that would make any college journalism dean, Charles, proud. Documents, phone calls, more documents, more open record requests. And by keeping a bunch of inquiries going at once, there was always something getting ready to go to air, which made him popular with the producers, less so with the public officials. Who will forget his explorations of unpaid water bills that ultimately led to an Atlanta mayor's press secretary being criminally convicted of violating Georgia's Open Records Act? It was the first criminal conviction related to the act in the state's history. There should have been so many more since, but that's a topic for another time. Since retirement, Richard has been generous in sharing his open records and investigative journalism experiences with younger journalists, even international journalists invited by the US State Department. Who knew that this particular State Department is still encouraging investigative reporting by foreign reporters? He's helped this foundation by partnering to train Georgia journalists, and I'm sure if you asked him tonight and invited him to your newsroom, he would say yes. His experience means he has lots of examples of the real world to share. We at the Georgia First Amendment Foundation are delighted to honor Richard Belcher's decades of work to hold government officials accountable with our 2025 Open Government Hero Award.
"50 years ago, I was a young reporter at Channel 5, and they sent me to Bartow County to investigate something. I don't honestly remember. But about 2 months into it, I needed to get some records from the clerk of Superior Court, and I went over the thing. I knew nothing about records, nothing. I mean, it just wasn't part of my game. I covered a lot of cops, and I went out and I talked to cops, and I got video, and you know, we hoped somebody would leak something to us. But getting records that would document something just had not become part of my style. About 5 minutes into the discussion with the clerk, I knew it wasn't going well, and he wrapped it up by saying, "Why don't you just mandamus me?" I said, "Damn, you know." It's been a while since I had Mr. Tucker trying to teach me Latin, but I think he has just told me, why don't you just try to make me? And I just sort of dropped it. I was too ignorant and too inexperienced to know that I should fight this. I didn't go back and get the Channel 5 lawyers, and there certainly was no go-to guy for records in the Channel 5 newsroom. It was 1975. We weren't playing that card. It was not a big part of what we did. I was hoping to find somebody who would help me push back against Mr. Make Me, but I didn't find anybody right then. In fact, it was probably 10 years later, the mid-'80s, before I came to realize that there's this vast, untapped sea of leads and stories sitting in the file drawers, not the databases, the file drawers of agencies all over the state, and I was entitled to them. The general public was beginning to catch on to access by open records requests. Lawyers, businessmen, oppo researchers for political candidates added to the crowd. But the spirit of Make Me will never go away. There won't be a Battle of Midway moment where we look back a few years later and say, that was the turning point. We knew we would win after this amendment to the laws or some Supreme Court ruling. No. There's always going to be scrimmaging. There's always going to be pushback. Ask Appin. Scrimmaging over these records is one of the reasons the foundation exists and is vital. Thank you for your work. And the work may get more difficult. I would say it probably will get more difficult. Readership and viewership are down. And Gallup recently found that just 28% of Americans have a good deal or some trust in the fairness and accuracy of the news media. That's the lowest Gallup has ever found. That should not affect access to public records, but we all know we do not live in a vacuum. So I'm pleased to count you all, especially the Georgia First Amendment Foundation and its allies, in the fight. It is honorable and worthy. Keep it up. I am grateful for your recognition of my small part in the fight. And damn, I love a good fight. Thank you. Yep. I'm going to walk off with you. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Richard, and again, congratulations. Before we get to the Weltner Award, I'd like to thank a couple of people who prepared the video we're about to see. Dale Russell, who again crafted a great script, and Atlanta Midtown High School student Stella St. Clair, who produced and edited the video. So let's introduce our Weltner honoree, Charles Davis, by rolling the video.
He is somebody who is committed to the values and principles of the profession. He is a true believer.
I mean, Dean Davis is just the epitome of excellence. He's the epitome of truth.
And full of curiosity. He always says that we should seek truth, and I think that was in our childhood a great deal too.
His intellectual nimbleness and the fact that he's unafraid of change. He is willing to take a hard look at the way that we do things here and rethink curriculum or rethink technology investments.
He says something once, he can say it twice. He's always there for the students, giving us advice, giving us anything that we need to be successful journalists, and I really appreciate the impact that he has on not just me as a student, but me as a person.
When I first met Dean Davis, he was very bubbly. I ran into him in the hallways of Grady, and I think he was just willing to interact with any student, and he was very excited. And it's funny because I remember Dr. Peters always talking about how you could hear him from further down the hallway before you even see him. So I think that's kind of just a representation of who he is. He's just a very excited, happy person, and I think he tries to bring that inside of Grady and make sure that every student feels welcome here.
I have the luxury now of being in a lot of spaces where people don't know I'm his kid, but they do know him. I work with a lot of UGA students in a fully separate area, and it's so fun hearing people talk about Dean Davis because I've never heard a bad thing, genuinely. And if you think walking around the halls makes you a good leader, he cooks hot dogs for the entire Grady student population.
I have walked into Dean Davis's office several times, and he's always willing to say hello, give me some advice, just for a quick chat, anything that I might need at that moment, he's right there.
I think he sets a very positive tone here at Grady. He obviously wants all students to succeed. He's very open to having conversations with everyone. He's always just in constant communication and making sure every student feels welcome here. And I think that tone is very important because students are obviously coming here to have that educational experience, but also they aspire to have a welcoming environment with that. So I think him being able to set that tone is very important for all of us and definitely makes us want to continue to be students here at Grady and enjoy our classes.
He's always told me and my brother, yeah, sometimes I have long days, but you never work a day in your life if you love what you're doing as much as I love what I'm doing. And really, I think the First Amendment, freedom of information, journalism bug bit him at the end of UNG and carried him through to now.
This has followed me, or a lot of this stuff has followed me around from place to place all career long, really.
If they create a Mount Rushmore to open government, and they certainly should, Charles Davis undoubtedly will belong on it. He is just one of those foundational figures in the movement. You can't imagine that the movement for open government and transparency in America today would be anywhere near as successful as it is without the energy, the enthusiasm, the intellectual firepower that Charles has brought to that effort over his career.
When people would tell him, you can't go into that public meeting, you can't have access to that public record. And his reaction was to wonder why. You know, what is so special about that meeting or about that document that I, either as a citizen or as a journalist, trying to learn more about the workings of government and then share that with the citizens served by that news organization, he was offended by it and curious. And so I think much of the rest of his 25 to 30-year career after that was spent trying to tell truth to news audiences, often working with public records laws, open meetings laws, and other forms of government sunshine laws.
One of the lasting contributions that Charles Davis has made to the open government field is as co-author of the handbook, The Art of Access, along with David Coulier. And even though this book really captures thoroughly a vast body of scholarly research about openness in government, it is very much not meant for a scholarly audience. It is a practical, I think of it as an owner's manual for democracy.
We as students are very grateful that he is receiving this award because he is the foundation of Grady and he has provided us with the ability to explore different journalism classes, acquire the knowledge that we need to, and I'm just very grateful to be able to see him receive this.
I think it means a lot because the First Amendment is what has carried his entire career. It is what he has really focused on ensuring, I think, the next generation carries the responsibility of in an era where it's getting lost a lot. And the fact that it is from the Georgia First Amendment Center, I think, means a whole lot to him because he will be the first one to tell you he is a Georgia boy.
I think this award means a great deal to Dean Davis, but honestly, I think that Dean Davis sees his reward every day. He is well respected among faculty, among students, among everyone here, not just in this specific college at Grady, but at this university. I think when they hear his name, they just smile because they know the kind of guy he is.
Dean Davis, congratulations on this richly deserved award. You have walked the walk for more than 30 years, and I am proud to call you a friend and a mentor. Congratulations.
Congrats, Dad. I love you.
I'm just going to pretend all of that applause is for me, so thank you. First, again, a big thank you to Stella St. Clair and Dale Russell for making that video happen. Again, as Richard mentioned, Stella is a senior at Midtown High School. I cannot emphasize that fact enough. And she was the video's producer, editor, while my GFAF colleague Dale wrote the script and organized the interviews. They captured so well the Charles Davis whom I know. I'm the Associate Dean of UGA's Grady College, where I also teach and research media law. I am also the immediate past president of the Georgia First Amendment Foundation. We are here tonight, as so many of the prior speakers already have said, to celebrate the principles of free expression and information access, both of which are core to our democratic society. We need to know and be able to speak freely about what's happening around Georgia in city halls, county courthouses, state commissions, police departments, and public schools. That access enables us to vote knowledgeably, to hold government officials accountable, and to engage in productive debates about challenging political, social, and economic issues. It is entirely fitting, then, that tonight we are presenting the Weltner Award to someone whose career is so deeply rooted in those values, my friend and colleague, Charles Davis. By every measure, he is a champion of transparency and of journalism's role in our democracy. Born in Athens, Georgia, he returned to his roots in the academy to lead the very place where he once studied and where so many bearers of light have been trained, Grady College, where he has served as dean since 2013. Before that, his 14 years on the Missouri journalism faculty, his leadership of the National Freedom of Information Coalition, and the Freedom of Information Center, they speak to his sustained commitment to the often contested space of open government laws. His books are not just academic exercises. They have had real-world impact, empowering journalists, researchers, citizens alike to navigate the complex terrain of transparency. What makes Charles's work so vital and so worthy of celebration tonight is that it reminds us that access is a core condition of civic engagement. As he once put it, for many people, filing an open records request will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and the response they get will shape their views of their government, fundamentally affecting their trust in public institutions and their sense of whether government officials are acting in the public interest. As an educator, Charles has not simply taught the theoretical. He has trained a generation of journalists in Georgia and beyond to carry the mission forward to strengthen our collective right to know. I can say that with certainty because I am one of them. Back in 2009, I was approaching my law school graduation, and I was interested in an academic career in combining my JD with a PhD. I knew of Charles's work, and I sent him an email to introduce myself and to ask about the Missouri PhD program. I looked up that email thread a few days ago while I was drafting these remarks, and you replied characteristically in all caps, and it says, "I would be delighted to discuss the program and thrilled to recruit you." And recruit me he did. I went to Missouri. He was my faculty advisor for 3 years, my dissertation chair. He supported me afterward, making calls, writing reference letters, giving career advice, as my own career took me to 2 other universities before bringing me back to the University of Georgia roughly 8 years ago. Since then, in my role as a media law professor, as department chair, and now as an associate dean, I've collaborated with Charles on scheduling, curriculum, budgets, hiring, firing, event planning, scholarships, annual performance reviews, promotion and tenure reviews, third-year reviews, post-tenure reviews, and reviews of my well-being after doing so many damned reviews. We've done hard work together, we've laughed a lot, and I've come to know Charles as a friend and colleague who is trustworthy, encouraging, thoughtful, generous, and of course, funny. He's never met a stranger, he is endearingly goofy, he is a human exclamation point that is equal parts charm and chaos. With all of that in mind, I'm going to close the way that the sports writer Peter King used to frame his Monday morning quarterback columns for Sports Illustrated with what I will call the 10 things I think about Charles Davis. Number 1, I think he is the kind of dean who walks into a room, tells a story, makes everyone laugh, and leaves before anyone can ask for funding. Number 2, I think he can work a room like nobody else. He could shake hands with a cardboard cutout and still make it feel valued. Number 3, I think when he was my dissertation chair, his main lesson was resilience, specifically mine. Every time I thought I had finished a chapter, he thought I had not. I think he talks about Georgia football the way normal people talk about their favorite child. Number 5, I think half of the freshmen believe that Charles is UGA journalism, and the other half believe he is a motivational speaker who stole a microphone from the Student Center. Number 6, I think if you've ever heard him talk about the First Amendment, you know how passionate he is about freedom of speech, especially his own. Number 7, I think he drives a bright red Georgia pickup truck that is the only one in America with both tailgate supplies and accreditation reports in the bed. Number 8, I think he loves to grill hot dogs for our students, and I'll add that he approaches grilling the same way that he approaches leadership, with tremendous energy and confidence and enough heat to make everyone slightly nervous. Number 9, I think if you have ever heard one of his stories about UGA or Athens back in the 1980s, you know they start as anecdotes and end as trilogies. And then number 10, I think that tonight we honor a man who stands in the finest traditions of this award's namesake. We are fortunate that Charles has dedicated his formidable energies not only to scholarship and institutional leadership, but also to the practical, challenging work of helping people in their daily lives act on the principles and promise of free expression and information access. Please join me in welcoming to the podium the recipient of the 2025 Weltner Freedom of Information Award, Charles Davis.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it. What an honor. It's so good to be with so many friends, family, loved ones. This is a very warm room full of people that I adore. So thank you all for being here. That video, God almighty, that about did me in. That was really sweet. Wrapping my daughter in there, that was cruel. I made it this far, so I think I can share a few words of thanks. Honors are always special, but First Amendment Freedom of Information honors stand alone. My career traces back to being kicked out of a city council meeting 30 plus years ago in Athens. Isn't that how all academic careers begin? But mine did. I was a greenhorn part-time reporter for the Athens Observer, may she rest in peace, and a brand new graduate student at the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication. And I knew so little about what I was doing that when I was asked to leave a meeting so that the council members could go into something called executive session, I had no idea what they were talking about, and I found it highly offensive, which speaks volumes to my personality. I then began to ask questions of my then communications law professor, Dr. Kent Middleton, and he patiently explained to me the basic workings of something called sunshine laws. First impression, had never heard the term before. I was captivated. So there's a law that says when things are public and when there's not. Yeah, I was fixed. It was all she wrote. I started pulling on that thread. This was about 1987, and I've been pulling on it ever since. It's formed the basis of my career. The law that provides for public participation in government meetings on the one hand and contained all sorts of exemptions on the other, exemptions that I soon learned you could drive a truck through, began to be sort of an obsession. I was fascinated by the whole drama of open government, the regal notion of openness, the reporters, activists, everyday citizens who use the laws to help keep government accountable. The more I learned about freedom of information, the more I wanted to know. My activism grew as my scholarship grew. Here was something I could actually study that would give back to journalism. So I made a decision in 1992, and let me tell you, this is the most pure educational decision anyone made. This bulldog decided to go to the University of Florida for 3 years of study at the Weltner Center for Freedom of Information at the University of Florida because it was the only place in the country, damn it, that really allowed you to just study FOI law. I will tell my Georgia people I wore red and black just about every day. I drove a red and black pickup truck on that campus. So there were sacrifices made, but they were not total. And I learned under the great Bill Chamberlain, many of you may know that name, a great media law scholar, really the champion of FOI, of all champions of FOI. I loved it. I learned so much. And then I went out and taught. And I've taught here and there. I have a wonderful student here from SMU, which is a long time ago tonight, and then at Missouri, and then at Georgia. But by the time I got to SMU, I was kind of a full-fledged FOI junkie. I joined the board of the FOI Foundation of Texas, knowing very little about what it was about, not knowing that it was going to shape pretty much the rest of my life. I became very active in that organization. I traveled all over the state doing First Amendment trainings. Picture this, y'all. We would do First Amendment trainings for high school teachers in the state of Texas. Let me tell you, that's tough work. You'd fly to Harlingen, Texas, rent a car, drive to a regional training center where there would be 75 football coaches in a room glaring at you as you talked about First Amendment freedoms. I learned a lot doing that, and my skin got a lot more leathery along the way. Then on to Mizzou, as John said, where I was lucky enough to run the National FOI Coalition for a number of years. We stood up new coalitions all over the country, from Indiana to New Jersey to Washington State to Wyoming. At one point in the early 2000s, we had 34 different state FOI coalitions. I don't know what that number is now, but it's smaller, sadly. The groups have diminished somewhat, but they're still there. I can't tell you the pride I have to see the Georgia First Amendment Foundation thriving these many years later. Peter Canfield and I were visiting beforehand, and I wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy. So I asked both Peter and Carolyn Carlson, who both confirmed that I spoke at the formative luncheon at the Georgia First Amendment Foundation in 1994. Which gives you some indication of how nascent that group was, that they asked some grad student from the Brechner Center at the University of Florida to come speak, but I couldn't have gotten here fast enough. The digital transformation of the mass media, its effects on the media itself has had much the same impact on state FOI movements. Everyone is doing more with less these days, it seems, and in some states we've seen a fairly sizable retreat from the halcyon days of yesteryear. But we cannot retreat on an issue as vital to democracy. It was Patrick Henry, the great revolutionary, who wrote that, and I quote, "The liberties of a people never were, never nor ever will be secure when the transactions of their rulers may be concealed from them," unquote. For the longest time, open government was, as it should be, a bipartisan issue. The reforms that swept America in the wake of Watergate drew support from both sides of the aisle. And for a while, the concept that open government is good government was axiomatic. In today's hyper-partisan era, it seems that whose ox is being gored trumps everything else. Lost in the constant fighting are the things we should all agree with, such as when any government tells you to distrust them, you should grab your wallet and hold on for dear life. All Americans should embrace accountability and transparency regardless of who's in charge. It's the most basic precept of American democracy. Alexander Meiklejohn's self-governance theory that holds that we, the electorate, must have the information we need to govern ourselves. In my open government work, I learned valuable lessons about the perils of secrecy, its corrosive effects on democracy, and sadly, the lengths to which some public officials will go to protect their secrets. After all, I was told by the city of Arlington, Texas, that the Dallas Morning News couldn't have architectural drawings for Jerry Jones' then under construction mega stadium because of, quote, homeland security, unquote. This despite the fact that we, as we showed in a follow-up story, the hole for the stadium at that moment could be seen from space. But I can actually top that. In 2002, the Smithsonian Institution's National Zoo took the position that viewing animal medical records would violate the animal's right to privacy and be an intrusion into the zookeeper-animal relationship. This came by way of a request for information from Washington Post staff writer Devera Cohn, who asked the National Zoo for animal medical records and necropsy and pathology reports after a beloved giraffe in the zoo fell dead. I found that story the other day. Thanks, Google. Here's my quote, and I'm going to frame this, I think. Said Charles Davis, director of the Freedom of Information Center at the University of Missouri. Quote, "You are kidding me. For the love of God, that is unbelievable. That beats anything imaginable," end quote. That's a good quote. I've had public agencies try to charge me $1.4 million for records that we ultimately obtained for $147. I've had public agencies cite exemptions to me, honestly, only to find after a moment's research that, well, they don't actually exist. That's happened to me multiple times, in fact. I've had more than one public official tell me over the phone, never face-to-face, always over the phone, that the release of a public record would be, and I quote, "terribly embarrassing," unquote. So I'll tell you what I tell my students. If you make it all a game, it's way more fun. You want the records? They want to keep the records from you. Let the games begin. I'll close with a mentor of mine, the late, great Mike McGraw of the Kansas City Star, Mickey to those of us who knew him and loved him, one of the best people in the world. Mickey had as much fun with FOI as anybody I ever met, and he passed that wisdom upon me. He had a long-standing FOI request at the USDA office in Kansas City for a story he'd long suspected, one that won him so many awards down the road. The USDA was not doing its job when it came to meat inspections, not even close. The USDA more than likely knew that Mike knew, so it sat on a request he had for years. And I mean years as in 5 years. And you know what Mike did? He put a reminder to call the FOI officer, Steve, every Friday at 1:19 p.m. For 5 years, he called Steve at 1:19 p.m. on the dot. Why? He just made it up. He thought it was funny. He would call Steve. They'd make small talk. They got to know a lot about one another's children's, wives, hobbies, avocations, and Steve would say, "It's pending." And then Mickey would go, "I'll talk to you next week," and then hang up, and then the next week he'd call him again. In 2014, after 5 full years, Mike called at 1:19 p.m., and Steve said, "Before you start talking, your records are ready." He broke the story he had been waiting on. The USDA's meat inspection regime was a disaster. It was turning the other way as the industry took chances with people's health. Now understand, McGraw had won a Pulitzer in 1992, 22 years early, for guess what? A series on the USDA. So they knew who they were dealing with, right? And he still got the records. Might as well have some fun, Mickey always said, and I could not possibly agree more. Thank you for this tremendous honor. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, Dean Davis, very, very quickly, you almost certainly don't remember this, but you were a professor of mine at the University of Missouri, along with 3 other students at the time, which is why I'm certain he doesn't know who I am. But you were infectious and inspiring back then, and I like to think it's a small part of the reason why I'm here today. So thank you and congratulations.
That's incredible.
And to help me present this award, I'd like to ask Susan Yao, a member of the Weltner family, to come up to the stage.
There it is.
Thank you all so much. I just want to give one more shout out to our sponsors for all their assistance tonight and supporting the organization. Thanks to each of you for being here, supporting our mission. Like I said before, we can't do it without all of you. These are important times for these issues. So thank you so much, and thank you all for thinking of us through the rest of the year. And we'll see you next year, hopefully. So have a great rest of your evening, and yeah, appreciate it.